Yeah.
Okay. Great. We're on live. What did you clap?
Yeah. No, I think everybody claps at the same time, right?
No, it doesn't matter.
What's with the clap?
Oh, because it's
You
way to
haven't seen
sync.
it? It's a way to sync. You can always sync with the clap.
To sync the video with the
Oh.
audio.
With the audio. With
Okay.
no, that just one
guy, one guy, one guy.
person clap. That's good enough.
That's what it is.
Anyway, so Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We are starting technically our third podcast after yesterday's mishap where we realized we were not recording via these mics at all. Alhamdulillah, the little video camera we have set up over there did record our audio to some extent, and we posted that video online. But we'll continue because we wanted to hit one important topic that we did not get to yesterday, and that is the elections. So yeah.
We were getting there. Start talking
Slowly.
about Trump and everything else, but we just kind of ended in disappointment. Although the audio was not terrible on the video,
It was terrible.
But it's not the quality that we want, so we ended it there. But alhamdulillah, we could still talk about it today because election is still 2 days out from.
Yeah, when I was editing the video, I'm like, darn it, man, we just talked about Trump. We never talked about Kamala properly, and it just felt too one-sided. And I could already feel the trolls talking about, oh, you guys like Trump. Why? Why didn't you even talk about Jill Stein? Well, here it is.
Now there is, I do prefer Trump over Kamala, but that's a separate story.
Okay.
But you want to at least talk about Vote for Peace first?
Yeah. So basically, we have a nice website now that allows you to just put in your address and find out who are all the pro-peace, pro-Palestine candidates in your area, starting with the presidential ticket, going all the way down. Of course, it depends on input from Muslims, right? So the Bay Area, for example, has a very thorough list of all the pro-peace candidates in their area, going from presidential to senator to state assembly, council member, county supervisor, city clerk, whatever it is, right? So all of that, you have people who've made pro-Palestine statements or pro-ceasefire statements. And you also have people who were actively Zionists, such as one of the city council members in our town who put up Israeli flags and all kinds of stuff. So we have a list of those, and it's a very simple system anybody can use. We have QR codes that have been distributed, but we'll put up the link for the website on here as well. But the nice thing is, this could be a tool that we use to leverage our power as a Muslim voter base, right? So, for example, I'm some random guy who's running for office, like a congressional seat. I would like my name to be on that website, because if I'm on there, that means I get the vote of potentially tons of Muslims in my area, right? So it's an immediate boost to my electoral outcomes.
Yeah, the candidates will start looking at this website. Right now, the only metric we use right now on the website is just for or against Palestine, the war, essentially. But one thing was interesting is that, sometimes you have candidates that are both anti-Palestine, right? They're pro-Israel. But one candidate is just a no-go, right? So instead of saying we recommend voting for somebody else, because, again, that somebody else is not in our favor anyways, but we at least state that for sure don't vote for this person.
Yeah, so it states reject clearly. But, there are more local voter guides. In the Bay Area, for example, there's one organization called Muslim American Alliance. And what they do is they will have a grading system. So Palestine, like pro-ceasefire is number one. And then they'll have things like parental rights. What are the stances on parental rights, LGBTQ issues, things like that. And then a third thing would be things like Hindutva or Kashmir issue, different other Muslim-related foreign policy issues. And so you can grade candidates based on that. So if they're both Zionists, let's say the top two candidates in the race are both Zionists, then you can look at their parental rights record. But Vote for Peace is simply a pro-peace platform right now. And so they're just looking at people who've made pro-Palestine statements. And if they haven't, then they're pretty much not on there. Which is fine.
If you go to the website and you find out your city or your community doesn't have all the local representatives on there, is there a way to reach out?
Yes, there's. It's on the website. There's some way for you to kind of reach out to the admins, and they can kind of connect with you and figure out, how you can help.
Yeah, because this is all locally. So we find different communities, we find different leaders in different communities, right? And we work with them, and we vouch for them, we validate them, and then once we do, they can contribute to the website and add their local recommendations.
Absolutely, yeah. Ultimately, you want this to be something that politicians want their name on, right? They want to be on there. And so how do they get on there? Well, they have to make pro-peace statements, right? Be anti-war, be pro-Palestine, or be, pro-parental rights, whatever the Muslims typically would like to have. So I think that's a nice way of developing our power. Now,
So what of the upcoming election? So who's the recommendation right now?
So I think the most relevant one for everyone in the U.S. is the presidential ticket right now, right? We're having the election in just 3 days. Actually, today's Sunday. 2 days. 2 days. Yeah. So it's all about the president. The nice thing in this election is that we have a very viable third option. Typically, Muslims always vote the lesser of two evils, right? So it's either Democrats or Republicans. Since 9/11, we've always voted pretty much Democrat all the way. 2016, 2020, majority of Muslims voted Democrat. And the idea always was, well, they, respect everyone, they love everyone, they'll love us, they'll accept us, they might not have the same values, but at least they won't kill us. At least they won't ban us from entering their country. Which is kind of what Trump or a lot of the Republicans did, which is they have Islamophobic tendencies. That's clearly documented, right? And Trump tried to do the Muslim ban and did all kinds of different things, which were problematic for us, of course. Having said that, the current Democratic administration, of course, killed us. Right? They committed a genocide, and they still are giving unlimited supply of arms to Israel. So now people are saying, okay, why should I vote for the Democrats when they committed genocide? And if I vote for them again, despite me having told them stop the genocide and do an arms embargo against Israel, if I still turn around and vote for them, they'll be like, okay, yeah, we can do whatever we want.
And the Muslims will still vote for us.
And the Muslims will still vote for us.
So the thing is, it's not about Trump's policies versus Kamala's policies. It's about just punishing the current party in charge, which happens to be the left, right? The liberals, right? And so that's the key. And so whether you vote for Jill Stein or Trump, you're essentially, the main purpose is punishing the party in charge. So you must vote. Because if you don't vote, you're essentially voting for the winning candidate, right? So you must vote, and you won't vote for the left. Just because we want to unify as a...
But what's important is this, because many people miss the point. I think so, because so many people, as Sohaib said earlier, the biggest reason why we've been voting Democrat, the Muslims at large, is because in general, the Democrats have an accept everybody policy, right? There's no room for racism, no room for sectarianism. We love immigrants. We love everybody, right? And that automatically fits with Muslims, and they'll love Muslims, and they'll accept Muslims. They'll let us pray. They'll let us wear hijabs and all those kind of things. And for us, that's better than the other side who may impose a Muslim ban and so on and so forth. And some people still worry about that. Right now, what's very important is this entire election, as far as we're concerned, the Muslims in America concerned, is the biggest single issue that overrides pretty much all other issues, because there's no other existential crisis. It's not like if any party gets elected, whether it's the conservatives, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, that suddenly the Muslims are going to have a terrible time in this country. That is not the case. It is entirely on the situation in Gaza. That's very, very important here. We are voting along Gaza lines, essentially. The candidates who are against the genocide, we are for. The candidates who are not against the genocide, we are against. Very straightforward. And that is the primary thing. We're not looking at who is more kumbaya or not. It's who is against the genocide and who is not. And that's what we're seeing. A lot of these people who are still saying pro-Kamal, or not all of them, I would say, but many of them are like, well, they're not going to impose a Muslim ban. They'll make our lives easier. They'll let us pray. Or again, not like the other side is not letting us pray. That's one important thing here to note when we're talking about any of these voter guides and stuff, is we're starting at Gaza as the most important issue, period. And then we go from there.
This election is really helping the Muslims kind of realign, right? Because now we know that they are basically backstabbing us. We voted for them. They know the Muslims voted for them, but they still commit the genocide. They continue that. And so now, if we can punish them, and by the way, I don't want to say we're punishing the left, okay? Because actually a lot of the people on the left are the people who have been most pro-Palestine, right? I want to make it clear that it's a Democratic Party that we want to punish, ideally, right?
That's correct, yes.
And if we now flip our vote, we are essentially swing voters then, right? The swing vote is what decides the election. Whenever the election is really close, you basically accounted for most of the population of America. Okay. Now all that matters is the groups that actually switch their vote or flip, right? And especially if there's a sizable block. And the Muslims are in particular a sizable block in a lot of swing states like Michigan, right? Huge chunk of Michigan is actually Muslim, okay? And so now if they suddenly all of a sudden abandon the Democrats and vote Trump or third party, then you're depriving the Democrats of those votes, and that could mean the difference between them winning the entire election or not because of our electoral system. In fact, in 2016, Hillary Clinton blamed Jill Stein, who was a Green Party third party candidate. She blamed Jill Stein for her loss against Trump. Because in 3 of the key swing states, the difference between Trump and Hillary in terms of votes were the votes that went to Jill Stein. And Hillary argued that the votes that went to Jill Stein were likely Democratic Party votes, right? Because Republicans aren't really going to vote for people, peace, planet, right? That's the Green Party's platform. They're going to vote, they're Democratic people who don't like the Democratic Party and voting third party.
Yeah.
And even though she got just 1%.
They're left of center. Again,
Yes.
Green is left of center, and so they steal votes from the left.
Well, what's the main purpose, right? The main purpose is to send a clear message, right? That we as a Muslim bloc won't stand for this. And that's very important, right? For the longest time, we are just a one-party community, right? The Republicans don't even look at us, right? But now you see Trump is interacting with the Imams in Michigan, and he's even saying, statements such as, I like Habib and all these people, and he even makes some statements at least that he might stop the war, right? Whether he does it or not, that's besides the point, but at least there is some outreach or engagement. What we don't want to do is be one party. We want to be a middle. We want to, case by case basis, decide who to vote for. And that way, it is truly like they have to work to reach our vote, right? If we're just one party, they're like, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to appease the Muslim bloc. They'll always vote for us, right? And if you really look at it, the ADL, right? They work with everybody. Mm-hmm. They work with the left and the right, right? They have people.
Yeah, bipartisan support.
Yeah, bipartisan support. And the Muslims should be like that. It was a mistake on our part after, 9/11, etc., that we chose one party. Essentially, and we stuck to that party for so many years. This is an excellent opportunity for us to be bipartisan.
Yeah, it gives us a chance to have weight behind our words, right? Because if you don't listen to us, then we actually will punish you, right? And just to finish my earlier point, in 2016, Jill Stein just got 1% of the public vote, and that's what flipped the election. Okay. And now imagine if she gets 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe more % of the public vote. That can really flip the election a lot. And even if that means Trump wins, at least anybody who's running for politics would know, okay, well, we definitely want to at least listen to the Muslims. And if you don't respect their thoughts and policies, they can make us lose. Okay. And the thing is, a lot of Muslims are concerned, okay, well, Jill Stein has certain policies. For example, she's pro-LGBT. Okay. But realistically speaking, the number one thing on our platform right now is the fact that she's pro-peace and that she's the only major presidential candidate that is against a genocide. And she's on most ballots in the states, by the way. Not all presidential candidates make it to the ballot, like independent ones. Jill Stein is on most ballots, amongst all states. And so there's actually a really interesting dynamic, which is that if she gets 5% of the public vote, she actually unlocks state and federal funding for future elections, because she'll then be considered a minor party. So Republican and Democratic parties are major parties in the U.S. And to be a major party, you need 25% of the public vote. This is not electoral college, just public vote. But if you get 5%, you're considered a minor party. And so minor party then gets eligible for actual government funding, right? And sometimes the Democrats will be like, or like AOC was criticizing the Green Party. Oh, they're not really serious. They only come for the presidential elections. They don't actually run any congressional candidates and the rest of the year because they don't get funding like you do, okay? But if they do, the big headline we're looking for is, oh my God, Gaza, the genocide, breaks the two-party system. Right. The only reason people will be voting en masse for Jill Stein is because of the genocide. That's literally the only reason.
Especially now, America has become so bipartisan. Every single issue, the two parties are no longer aligning. You either completely go one way or the other way, right? We really need a third party. And if all we accomplish this election is get Jill Stein to 5%, that is not a small accomplishment. That's a huge accomplishment because next election, even next mid-election, right, season, we will have a third candidate, a third party to vote for, and that would actually majorly change the U.S. dynamics.
Absolutely. And do you know Jill Stein's VP pick is Muslim? Like the Green Party's vice presidential pick is a Muslim.
Who is it?
Butch Ware.
But what does that tell you? That means
He's a pretty he came on Thinking Muslim podcast recently too. I mean, he's really cool.
But what does that mean? That means Jill Stein recognizes her voter base.
Oh, absolutely.
The vice president pick happens towards the end of the cycle of elections. Why? They figure out who their voter base is. They figure out who they appeal to most, and based on that, they pick the vice president.
Yeah. And so if you want to vote for a Muslim, you have a chance.
Exactly.
Vote green.
So don't think
Forget
that
random
if you choose Jill Stein, it doesn't matter because she'll want to get elected. We had to plan far ahead. Muslims should stop thinking short term, right? This is a long term thing, and not only that, you are still punishing the current administration by picking Jill Stein because, again, like we said, it will most likely take away from the Democratic vote and not from the Republican vote. So you're indirectly punishing the current Democratic administration by voting Jill Stein.
And I would like to briefly go over the two responses to this as to why people prefer to vote Democratic anyway, right? What the reasoning is. And let's just go over this because there's only two things I've heard, right? One is a lesser one I'll mention first, and I mentioned briefly before, is that the Democrats generally are on the side of the Muslims, meaning they're pro-humanitarian, they're pro-diversity, they're pro-acceptance of all people, all races, all religions, and that includes Muslims, right? And as you mentioned earlier, the people, like you said, we're not punishing the left, we're not punishing the liberals, we're punishing the Democratic Party itself. Why? Because most of the people who are on the side of Gaza and against the genocide and pro-peace are the people on the left. And so you can see that. And for them, it's like, no, if we go Trump, if we go Republican, assuming there's only two parties, I'm going to ignore the Green Party for a moment here. If we go Trump, if the other side wins the election, then that is going to mean a drastic change for, the survival of the Muslims in America. That's the first argument. And I would say the basic response, and I'll say the second one, we can discuss this. The basic response is no. Trump's already been here before. It didn't change things that much. Even his quote-unquote Muslim ban didn't change things for most people. In fact, to my knowledge, immigration went by a lot faster when he was around. The second aspect of this, and the big one, these proponents are Mehdi Hassan and people like that, and they say that, look, yes, we've been over this already, they're both bad candidates. As far as Gaza is concerned, neither Kamala Harris or Donald Trump are good for Gaza. However, he says, at least there is a chance with the Democratic Party. If you have Kamala as president, at least there's a chance. And that's what they say.
I mean, his main argument is, which is the typical argument, is that there could be nothing worse than having another Trump presidency. That is the absolute worst thing possible. And his argument is that the Zionists themselves, the Israeli prime minister and others, want Trump to come into power. So his argument is, well, if they want him to be in power, shouldn't you want Trump not to be in power? Right? I mean, you shouldn't be on the same side. That's exactly how he grilled the Muslim Imams in Michigan who endorsed Trump in a Trump rally, right? He's like, well, that's exactly what Netanyahu wants. Why are you doing the same thing? It doesn't make sense. And the Muslim Imams just made the same point, which is, look, we can't just turn around and vote for Kamala again. That is impossible, okay? And actually, for Michigan Muslims, I think it makes more sense too. Because Trump actually remembers his friends. He likes flattery. He remembers his friends. And if you never engage with him, he's going to care for you even less, right? We need Muslims, ultimately. We need Muslims on both sides. We need people engaging with the Democratic Party. We need people engaging with the Republican Party. And we need people engaging with the Green Party. Okay? We need Muslims everywhere, right? And in Michigan, if you're actually, swapping you're a swing vote, you flip from Democrats to Republicans, then go all the way, right? Vote for them, talk to them, engage with them. They even had a private meeting we talked about in the last podcast with them, right? To end the war. And so, great, go for it. Now you'll have Trump, who knows Muslims, and he'll know who to talk to, he'll know who to consult. Like, hey man, I need to know about what the Muslims are, feeling about a certain issue, and they'll tell him.
But what I have to say is at the presidential level, at that level, again, like we said, Democratic generally at a lot of levels support Palestine, right? But at the top level, at the presidential level, we don't see that support from Kamala Harris. Actually, she is constantly saying, Israel has the right to defend itself, and she's constantly supporting Israel in every single chance she gets. Trump, on the other hand, on certain occasions, you do see him support it. 100%, you do see him. I won't deny that. But at least you do see him at times also support for Palestine, right?
Not Palestine. What he says is he'll end the war.
End the war.
Exactly.
That's all he says.
Yeah.
Okay. There was actually a debate between Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris. And they were talking about who's better for Israel, Kamala or Trump. And Sam Harris was on Kamala's side because his argument was, the real anti-Semites, are on the right. And they're all Republicans.
Which is true.
Which is true. He's like the non-jihadi. He said the non-jihadis. Amongst the non-jihadis, the actual anti-Semites are on the right. And Ben Shapiro's argument was, no, the real anti-Semites are those who are going pro-Palestine, and they're mainly on the left. Okay? Ultimately, they're both very Zionist, right? But the argument Ben Shapiro was making was, hey, Kamala, her problem is that she'll say Israel has a right to defend itself, but always add this little thing about, we have to care about the people in Gaza too, right? He's like, it should never be. It should be straightforward. Israel has a right to defend itself, and that's it. Okay, so they're not happy with Kamala. A lot of them want Trump. So in terms of who's worse, they're both pretty bad. And Trump, by the way, I mean he moved the capital to Jerusalem for Israel and did the embassy, moved it to Israel, moved to Jerusalem, did a bunch of things that were very pro-Israel, and he's always supported Israel.
Yeah, and then his son-in-law, his daughter's a convert to Judaism, and it's clearly Zionist, and his son-in-law was one of the kind of big people who pushed the Abraham Accords and such, right?
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that he may very well be a worse candidate for Gaza.
It's possible.
It's possible, but we don't know. And at the very least, we can show that to cater to the Muslim vote for future elections is a worthwhile cause.
Actions speak louder than words. Done. Democrats did it. They did it. Like, how much worse can you get?
Yeah.
Short of nuking Gaza.
Exactly.
I mean, what more do you want? That's
so
just
rivers
of blood. Done.
What I say to the Muslim viewers, right? What I say to the Muslim viewers is, don't vote Democrat. That's the primary thing, right? If for whatever reason, you want to vote for Trump for XYZ reason, fine. At least that's still a punishment for the current administration. Other than that, I think if you can't bring yourself to vote for Trump, luckily we do have an alternative, and there is a long-term benefit to that. Jill Stein, right? That is an excellent alternative to voting for Trump while still hurting the current administration.
What a blessing! Think about it, right? You have a Jewish lady who's speaking out against Israel, against the genocide. She can't even be called an anti-Semite because she's Jew.
She's a self-hating Jew.
Whatever. She's a Jew. Okay, and so she can get away with criticizing Israel and being against the genocide. And now, when you support her, you demonstrate, not all Jews are represented by Israel. Actually, only a small portion are, because a lot of Jews are protesting against Israel. And now you have a chance to actually vote your conscience. Instead of holding your nose and voting for the lesser of two evils, you can literally vote your conscience, vote for a candidate who is pro-peace, who is pro-Palestine, and whose vice president pick is a Muslim too. What more do you want?
So we covered this. Now, what about the Muslims who think voting is just wrong in and of itself? Right? We have to address that. I'm sure there's a lot of Muslims out there who, might agree with everything else we said, but generally speaking, they said there's not a candidate that completely aligns with us. And, the best thing for us to do is just not participate.
So Dr. Assad, brother, is voting haram? Brother, please tell me. Yeah, Sheikh.
The Prophet
Fatwa. I'm looking for a fatwa,
the
bro.
Prophet never voted.
We don't get fatwas.
And therefore, no. But look, there's been many actually. Most recently, I would say that popped up on my feed was Sheikh Yasser Qadi gave a talk on this again. He's done this many times before. He did it again, a khutbah, and then I think with somebody else who talked the same thing. And I also saw, who was it? Someone else was giving a khutbah on the same thing. He pretty much gave also all of Dr.
A lot
Yasser
of
Qadi.
khutbahs on this recently.
Yeah, recently, and they all bring up the same point. And the point is, they always bring up the time that the Muslims went to Abyssinia. The Muslims were being persecuted by the Quraysh in Mecca. And before we moved to Medina, before the migration to Medina happened, the people who were most at risk, meaning the poor, the servant class who converted to Islam in Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ said that there is a just king who does not wrong his people, basically, in Abyssinia by the name of Najashi. Go to him, he will not wrong you. And there's a long story, but the crux of it comes to this, that while they were there, a couple things happened. One is the migration occurred. Remember, there was the first migration, second migration to Abyssinia. They came back, they went back again. But now they're living there. They've been there for a while. The Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims migrate to Medina. And anyone who was in Mecca at the time was given the command basically to go to Medina. But the people in Abyssinia, the Muslims in Abyssinia, were not asked to move just yet. They stayed there. And during this time, there was turmoil. What happened is the king, Najashi, who was basically a secret Muslim at this point. Now, the Muslims did not know this. Very important. The Muslims did not know that Najashi was a Muslim because he was a secret Muslim. He was still a Christian at this time. And the Muslims, they saw that his nephew, basically, Najashi's nephew, was trying to overthrow his uncle. And one of his talking points, by the way, was he accepted these Muslims who are not Christian. I'm a better, pure Christian. We will remove these people from our country. And so the Muslims who were there, they made dua. They prayed for Najashi at this time. Knowing he was a Christian. Again, he's not a Muslim. He's not on their side. But he's someone who was helping them. And so they prayed for them, which is fine. They didn't vote per se. But point is, you can want a person in power who is more favorable towards you to remain in power, even make dua for that.
Yani akhi, I can make dua for Jill Stein.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but actually, there's another example that's given. The Muslims, right? They eventually, we know this, they conquered both Persia and the Roman Empire. They fought both. They went to battle with both. They fought both. They defeated both. However, still, when the Romans defeated the Persians, the Muslims were happy. Did they align completely with the Romans? No, of course, they eventually conquered them, right? They eventually attacked them. They went to war with them. Like, how much more antagonistic can you get? However, despite that, they were still happy when the Romans won over the Persians, because the Romans, at the end of the day, acknowledged God and were closest to the Muslim belief compared to the Persians. Did they also have a lot of practices that the Muslims didn't agree with? Of course. Did they also attack and kill Muslims? Yes. Would Trump do a Muslim ban? Maybe. Most likely, right? But either way, I mean, does Jill Stein support LGBT? Yes. But either way, we could, from all these candidates, choose the candidate that best serves our purpose, right?
It's very profound because it's in the Quran. I mean, غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ, you know. It basically, it's enshrined in the Quran that Muslims at the time would have liked the Romans to win. And they did win against the Persians, right? Even though Romans have tons of issues that, I don't know, human sacrifice and like slaves and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, the Trinity.
They had the Trinity, ultimately, right? But in politics, it's about political expediency, right? You don't, if you are voting for someone or you support someone, doesn't mean you endorse every single thing they do. Same point that Mehdi Hassan made with the Muslim Imams. He kept saying, oh, is it okay to vote for a molester, a rapist imam? You know, is it okay to vote for somebody who, you know, is committing fraud and blah, 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 and this and that? And he's like, look, I'm not voting for him for those things. That's not why I'm voting for him. I'm voting for him as a protest vote. Okay, done. You don't have to endorse every single thing. That's what politics is. It's always a compromise. It's a give and take.
And politics is a dirty game in general. This should be noted, and people have brought this up a lot, and I'll try to keep this brief. But basically, everyone, again, Yasser Qadhi has a lecture on this, but we tend to glorify who conquered Jerusalem again? It was Salahuddin Ayyubi. So Salahuddin Ayyubi, we say, oh, he was a great Muslim, this, that, and the other. He was a scholar of Islam, but he played the political game through and through. There's many things he did, if you go through the history, that were not very Islamic, you could say. There's actions he did, maybe orders he gave, laws he created, that you would be like, any scholar, again, he was a very learned man, any scholar of Islam would never say such a thing. This is just wrong on so many levels. He probably killed, assassinated people to get power. I'm sure he did many things that were, uncouth or un-Islamic, let's call them. But look, that's why politics is a dirty game. And look, we still look at him in a positive light today. He was overall a benefit for the ummah, no doubt. He conquered, he took back Jerusalem into Muslim hands. But that doesn't mean that everything he's wrong, because he did one wrong. Let's say he did one wrong. He probably did many. He did one wrong, and now we've written him off. You can never vote for him. And to like Salahuddin Ayyubi or want him to do anything is automatically haram because he committed any haram, let's say publicly even. That's not the way it's worked.
Ultimately, a vote is not just a personal thing, right? If you really think about it, if you really think about tactical, right, what it means. Simply put, when let's say majority Muslims vote for Kamala, it's not just our vote. What does it say? What does it say when they look at the statistics that majority Muslims voted for Kamala? It says very loud and clear that they could do whatever they want and they have the Muslim vote. They do not have to appeal to the Muslims. Okay, now we say, what does it say when the Muslim, let's say majority, voted for Trump? What does it say? First of all, it says very clearly that we're bipartisan, right? We could swing vote one way or the other. You had to pay attention to us. Mm-hmm. We could make you lose and win elections. Again, we're majority voters in Michigan, right? That's a swing state that Muslims control. That's one thing it clearly says, right? The other thing it says, it's maybe certain issues like abortion or whatever it is. There's certain issues that maybe Muslims have appeal on one end versus the other, LGBT, right? Maybe the Muslims are making their voice heard on a specific issue that's very important to them. And that is why, clear message, we voted for Trump. Same thing with Jill Stein, right? If the Muslim majority voted for Jill Stein, again, it's a very clear message that we wanted to punish the current administration. While still being on the left, but we were on this specific issue, we wanted to punish the current administration. So think about what your vote says, not just as your own individual, what does my vote say for me? Okay, what does the vote say as a block? And Muslims should start operating as a block. That we are talking to every single candidate. We are making our voices heard, and they want to hear our voices. They want to meet with Imams. They want to discuss our issues. We can say 1, 2, 3. These are the main issues. Right? Align with us on this. We will vote for you.
They really do want to talk to us. I mean, I traveled to Atlanta recently. We all did. But we visited one of the mosques in Augusta. It's another town a little bit further out from Atlanta. They had a beautiful big mosque. Okay. Amazing. Islamic Center of Augusta. I went there and I met the guy who runs the mosque. And I'm like, hey, is there anybody here who makes a voter guide? Because I wanted to add a voter guide from Augusta, Georgia, into VoteForPeace.info. He's like, no. We don't deal with politics here. We already have enough masjid politics. I'm like, hey, I'm not talking about you. Like, anybody in the community who makes a voter guide? Nope. Okay. So we are very, very basic, right? In fact, we're even more basic than that. We're not even registered to vote. A lot of us aren't, right? A lot of us are not even registered to vote. If you compare with, let's say, the Jewish community, by the way, they're very politically active. And a lot of them will vote. They're registered to vote. They're very, very engaged, and they know their local politicians. A lot of them. In the Muslim community, I think a lot of us are just second generation, right? And we still haven't fully integrated into the system, or we're still learning the ropes. So our parents came here, and I came here myself, right? But a lot of us are still fresh off the boat, so to speak. And so I guess we're still acclimatizing to the system, but we need to acclimatize fast.
I think there's a second reason. We talked about, why Muslims, we meant the whole, brother, why is voting haram, right? But more than that, it's this apathy. even if they don't think voting is haram, even if they don't think voting for a particular candidate is bad, whatever, there's an apathy towards voting. And I can understand where it's coming from. Let's take the presidential vote, right? It's the biggest vote coming up right now. They think electing the president has no meaning, especially as far as the Muslims are concerned. Whether you elect a Democrat or Republican, Muslims die around the world. Americans' foreign policy is terrible for Muslims, generally speaking.
Muslims
right?
voted for Bush, by the way, before 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Muslims voted Bush in.
And here's the thing. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter whether you elected Obama, whether you elected Bush, whether you elect Trump. I mean, Muslims still died around the world. And so for us, it's like, it doesn't matter who you elect. As far as the president goes, it really just doesn't matter. And I can understand where they're coming from, and it may be true. I mean, to quote Putin, it's like, yeah, I don't care who the president-elect is, because eventually the men in the black suits come and they do as they say. Mm-hmm. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But point is, there's this strong apathy. And fact is, you have to play the game. You can be like politics. Again, it is a game. Politics is a game. You got to play it right. You got to do the lobbying well. You got to show that we come out and vote in droves, and that the Muslim vote matters. And that's just the way this country works. It's a fact. You know, the APAC doesn't have power for no reason. They're really good at this game.
See,
really good.
The thing is that, a lot of Muslims are like, you know what, none of this matters. It's not our system. It's not our way of governance. Basically, we have to wait for the Khilafat, right? And I don't agree with a lot of people who shut down the idea of a Khilafat. People who are working on it, who can work on it, continue working on it. That's fine, right? But we also have to play the game that we're in right now. We are in the West. We chose to live here, and the elections do affect us, right? Now, whether or not doesn't matter who we vote for, it helps get Gaza out. But what it is imagine for instance, every single Muslim was registered to vote. Just imagine for that. And every single Muslim voted as a bloc. Okay? What would that mean? That would mean the candidates have to pay attention to what we say. That's essentially what that means. Don't think of what's happening now. It's the same thing. A lot of these, even like Western, leaders, I forgot who quoted this, but said, you know what, beware when the Muslims gather for Fajr. Right? What does that show? Once the Muslims are arriving at Fajr for Salah, they're forced to be reckoned with. They're disciplined now. They're for their deen. They have their priorities correct. Now we should fear them, right? And it's not that I go to the masjid and I see two Muslims in prayer and I say, you know what, the Muslims aren't ready. I stop showing up. Individual people count. One guy says, doesn't matter how many people show up, I'm showing up. Eventually you'll have all of them show up. Same thing voting. Don't think that, okay, my vote this time didn't matter because people still died. My vote last, 8 elections, 4 elections, 3 elections didn't matter. Participate, encourage others to participate, encourage people to vote as a bloc, and we'll get there.
It really is the long game. It really is. And as you mentioned, and it is a game, right? You need to play the game the way it is, right? And there will be certain compromises you have to make, but you have to look at the bigger picture. And ultimately, what you really want to do is move the needle ever so slightly in our favor. And if you've done that, that's all, right? And right now, if we vote third party, or even if we vote Trump, we definitely move the needle in our favor because it gives us more weight to our words.
Exactly. And another part of elections too. Now, this is not necessarily related to the Gaza situation and the Muslim agenda, but at the very least, there are local policies that affect you directly. Whether it's changing the way they bill your water, whether they're going to shut down your local zoo, whether they're going to create a new library down the street from you. So in general, I would say voting is a good thing. Not just things that you think, again, this apathy where I don't think the presidential vote matters. Let's just say you're right. For argument's purposes, let's say you're right, the president doesn't matter. Go and vote because there are other things that will matter to you. The person they elect to be the county supervisor on the education board. Mm-hmm. They will decide what books your children read in the public schools.
Absolutely.
Whether, again, like I said, whether there's local, the way they tax you, the way other things happen. Do you care about your money? Go and vote, right? At the very least.
I think part of the apathy also comes from this concept that we're not used to governing. The whole idea of democracy is that every person, every citizen governs the country. Every citizen has power. And so as part of your day-to-day of earning money and like taking care of your house and your children, you also have to govern the country in a way, so to speak, right? With your vote. And so you need to really think about the policies that are happening in your land, in your local area, in your city, what books are going here and there. And you have to talk to people, you have to lobby, and you have to vote for the right person who's going to represent your views. We're just not used to it. Like Pakistan, right? That's where I'm from. Pakistan, sure, you vote for the president, but even that's highly rigged and you're not really getting anywhere, right? And the local politics, you don't have a lot to do with. Okay, there's some guys who are, ethnically the right person for a certain state, and they get elected and they have inroads with all the other police guys and everything else. And it's a rigged system. I get it. Okay. In the US, yes, there's corruption. There's corruption at high levels with all the money that comes in from corporations. Lobbying is basically legalized corruption and bribing in a way, but it's legal. So we need to engage in it to have any say. And the reality is, Gaza has shown us that we do have a say, right? All the protesting that happened, pro-Palestine protesting, all the letters, all the calls, everything kept on moving the needle ever so slightly, right? They went from, that's it, Gaza is going to be a parking lot, no problem, we're going to give all the weapons in the world, to at least a point where Biden has to genuflect a little bit to our demands and be like, okay, we're going to make a humanitarian pier, even though that was nonsense. Or we're going to, at least try to withdraw some arms, quote unquote.
And there's been several humanitarian pauses.
Right?
Look,
we're getting somewhere.
There are small wins.
Yes.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, our brothers and sisters in Palestine are still dying. But every step counts. It does. So, and it's important to remember, and you think, oh, this is a war happening over there, we don't have a say in that. No. The day America pulls funding or stops providing arms to Israel, that war ends. And we live in the country, and we do have a say. Maybe small, but we do have a say. And to not exercise that is, yeah.
I want us to probably end with this one ayah. It's in Surah Al Imran. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. That these days of power, basically power, we alternate between the people. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ. So that we get to know who actually believes. I mean, if you say the kalama, you're a Muslim, you believe, right? But when you're tested is when iman really shows. Whether or not you actually have iman comes out when you're tested. And وَلْيَتَّخِذَ مِنكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can take shuhada or martyrs from you. Being a martyr is a huge blessing, right? It's an amazing blessing if you're a martyr. It's such an honor, right? You skip the barzakh, you go straight to heaven, right? And imagine if we don't have any shuhada, that's actually sad, right? That's a loss for us. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it a means for us to become shuhada, right? وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies that even if you're being oppressed in that time and you're being killed, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love the oppressors.
And it's beautiful. And it reminds me, it's what it said in Uhud, the Battle of Uhud, which is technically a worldly loss. The Muslims lost the Battle of Uhud. But many of the scholars of Islam never write off the Battle of Uhud as a loss, because what did he say? He says, no, but in actuality, we won this war and you lost, because your dead are in the hellfire and our dead are in Jannah, right? In the paradise. And that's beautiful. And Shaykh Umar Sulaiman said the same thing. Said, Gaza right now is a portal to Jannah.
SubhanAllah. What a perspective.
One thing we were discussing, that there's many types of worship that we have in Islam, right? One of them is shuhada, to become a shaheed. That door will never close. What does that mean? That means throughout history, throughout our lifetime, there will always be Muslims dying somewhere, because Allah will keep that door open for the Muslims. So never think there will be time in the world where Muslims aren't dying. They will be dying, somewhere or the other. Whether a war or a defensive war, whatever it is, Muslims will be dying because that door will always be open. And right now, it is wide open in Palestine.
And just because they're being tested and getting killed and being oppressed does not, in the very least, mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love them. At all. Like the most tested people, the prophets, were the most beloved people. And this is something comes up all the time in street dawah, right? With Christians and others. Like, hey, tests in this world, evil in this world, may have a wisdom that we don't know about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, right? He has the picture, we just have the pixel.
And Allah never burdens a soul with that which it cannot bear.
SubhanAllah.
All right. So I think this is a good place to end. So I'll basically end it here. And I think because we're hopefully, inshallah, going to continue this regularly, please like, subscribe, join all the things. And inshallah, we'll try to keep this at least weekly, if not more frequently. Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah, we plan on starting a newsletter as well. And we'll link it in soon enough.
Yeah. And then last plug for VoteForPeace.info. So that's VoteForPeace.info, where you can get a voter guide, hopefully for your area, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.